Well, it's time for another episode of my sewing story. And I just want to let you know that I would have had more had I not taken quite a fall in February. I actually was just walking and outside of Walmart, and they had a concrete area that was kind of misshapen, and an area that was, I just didn't see it. It was a little windy. There was no ice on the ground. And I fell right in front of a camera, and I fell right on my face. And inside of my mind's eye, I could see all my teeth go in and my nose go into my head and come back out. I went to the hospital and got a CT scan, and I've been undergoing therapy to literally pull my face out of my head, is how the doctor describes it. I'm not fully recovered yet, but I am on the mend, and that's the name of my one of my playlists on my YouTube channel, should you like to mend and want new amazing ways of doing it, with the octi hoops and also the creative feet. So back to my story. I'm rambling. In the month of March, I made more mistakes than I've made in my entire career working with my company and you. So for those of you who I made a mistake and didn't ship you the right items, I'm really sorry. And if any of you have not let me know that I did that, please do let me know. I am humbled by what happened and grateful to be on the other side of it. I'll keep you posted on my progress with it. And I also tried to go live, and I really am feeling like the universe is telling me not to go live, because every time I get started, it's just something's not working. And part of that was how my brain was reacting, and the other part is that I just feel like something's telling me not to do it. So I'm going to be doing more of these pre-recorded kind, and they're less painful to watch anyway, because you don't have to sit there while I fumble around, or you'll be getting the edited versions, and I'm just so grateful for your patience with me as I've evolved through this. I'm also re-establishing my art, and I am going to say I'm sorry that I have kind of kept you in the dark of all of who I am, because I was afraid of how you guys would take it if you learned that I was given the gift of mediumship at a very young age. The earliest really clear memory is 4 years old. My mom also, my siblings, my kids. We have gifts of intuition, and it's partly how I invented my products. I can't tell my story without disclosing that part of who I am. And if you are interested in any type of a reading or understanding what I do when I'm not Clare Rowley, inventor of creative feet, Clare Rowley fine artist, Clare Rowley author. I am also Clare Rowley medical medium, and I do pet readings and all kinds of stuff at clarerowley.com. That's where you'll find that. So back to the creative feet story, which I cannot tell without telling you that, because I did things differently than most people when they create something. And I left off with the satin edge foot in my last segment of my sewing story, which is being created because I have been asked to tell my life story my entire career. And so this is the way I'm going about it, telling my story in video, which AI will probably help me write into a book, and get that out for you guys should you want it. An American Inventor's Story. A young girl, only 23 by the time I launched my products, but I was only 20 when I created the second foot in the 3 Creative Feet series, the Pearls and Piping Foot. The Pearls and Piping Foot was created again for a very special lady that came in. So the story before talks about my father and how he worked with physically challenged sewers, because back in the 70s, there were very little options for people with physical challenges for a career. And back then, most of the manufacturing of garments were in the Los Angeles area, some areas of Florida and New York, and I'm sure there were other states. But we were centered in Los Angeles, which was, and still is, a hub for manufacturing of garments and supplies, large bolts of fabric. And the garment districts is what you want to look up to find more information on the types of products that you need for manufacturing. Trying not to get sidetracked here. So, when I was a 10-year-old girl, the story of Helen Keller came out, and I think I might have mentioned this in the last video, that Helen Keller's story is about her being born blind and deaf, and that is the same story for Mary, the lady I invented the satin edge foot for. So if you're interested in learning how my journey of making sewing machine feet started, that is a kind of beginning. The actual beginning is when the overlock sewing machines came out and pearls came out on a string. And I created the very first beading foot for the serger. But you won't see it on my website because it was copied by a company that took on the Baby Lock name. I was selling lots and lots of serger sewing machines. I remember selling 230 sergers at the Los Angeles Fair in Pomona, California. And it was because I had the Pearls and Piping Foot, or a beading foot that I created. Basically, just creating a tunnel underneath the foot and incorporating a paper clip to hold things in place. And I also had written a book and color-coded the entire book, and this company took my book and published it verbatim. This is back when I was very young and naive and didn't really know that people could be so criminally bad. I didn't know people would violate you, especially when you were doing so much for them by selling their sewing machines. Now I know. And they took my beading foot, so they made that. They took my thread dispenser, that was a little bit later. They took my thread dispenser and also copied that as well. But they did it out of particle board and didn't last long. So the thread dispenser is still the best method of bringing thread to your sewing machine needle, and stops all the shredding, skipping, looping thread experiences that you have. If you have not already got one of those, be sure to check it out on my Notions section of creativefeet.com. And let me know if you share with others in the comments if you have the thread dispenser and you know how pivotal it is to successfully sewing without all that frustration. That's why I'm able to sew for hours and hours and hours, as if you watch some of my videos. I have one that's 6 hours long, I think. And that was like a full demonstration of all the creative feet, so you can find that. If you go into my YouTube channel and go to playlists and you go to creative feet, you can find the show demo. And it's like what I did when I used to do shows, because I'm no longer interested in doing these shows and sitting in a chair, because they're just not bringing in enough people, and it's too hard on me at 63 to do that. I choose not to. How's that? because I am doing my painting as well. So, full disclosure is what I'm doing. I watched this video this morning and it said that if you're not showing people who you really are because you're afraid of how they're going to take it, that you're gaslighting them. And I would never want to do that. I would never want to do that. So, call me crazy, say I'm talking foolish. I've had people say nonsense, and I don't want to hear this part of your life. And, it's part of who I am. It's why I was able to create these products, because I had my spirit guides to help me. And the pearls and piping foot was that foot. So satin edge foot was when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, after all the publicity from the occupational therapists at hospitals helping people with physical and visual challenges so that they could have a career, so they could make money, better salaries than stuffing envelopes. And we're kind of seeing a similar evolution right now with AI that was taking place back then as well. They had the invention of robotic assembly lines, and there was this scare of all these people's jobs, losing their jobs. And so I feel like I've lived a long life to see a similar cycle come back around. The fear about losing your job, so having a skill, something you can do with your hands, something that a machine cannot do, is really important. And it's also important to get in touch with yourself and to really be true to yourself, to not hide who you are because it's weird. And so many people are becoming aware that we are spirits in bodies, not bodies with spirits, and that we're all one, and everything that we do connects. We're always connected, and you're never alone, and nothing you do cannot affect someone else. So treating one another the right way, living a life without judging other people, and that's a tricky one. Like, some of you might be judging me right now for what I'm saying, is assuming that I'm lying without really knowing. Know this, I love you anyway. And you can see testimonials on my website. So what you're hearing now is the inside of my nose is not the way it used to be, and it sounds a little funny. At some point, I'm probably going to have surgery, and I'm hoping this incredible doctor who takes her hands on my head and energetically is moving the tissues. It's quite something. I have had considerable healing, and my eyes were even not pointing the same direction. So she said my eyes were like googly eyes from Goonies, which I never saw that movie, and now I never want to. But I couldn't turn without having to turn 3 times to check to make sure there wasn't a car coming before I'd cross the street. I now can function pretty good on driving without having any issues. So I'm also in a contest, in case you want to support me right now, called The People's Artist, and it's being done through Facebook, if you have Facebook in there. And you can vote for me. I'll put the link in the description below the video, should you want to. If you're not mad at me for having more interest in my life besides just sewing, and can celebrate my art, my love of art, which is my first love. I was born with, my mom used to say, you were born with a crayon in one hand and a pen in the other. And I was always writing or painting. And then when Creative Feet hit, I was just only able to paint every now and then when I was home. So I've been feeling really good about that. And if you want to get any of my art, you can also find prints and also the originals on clarerowley.com as well. And the link is in the description below. So this lady came in with by herself. She had been referred to us from her occupational therapist at the hospital because she was making wedding dresses and beading wedding dresses for a career. She didn't have a husband. She never had any children. She was an island. That's how she I remember her describing it, as that she's just alone, and there's no one that she could lean on, and devastating, heartbreaking. And she got super excited when the pearls came out on a string. So these are the heat set pearls that are melted on a waxy thread. And she knew it wouldn't be as good as hand beading. She would never be able to replace that, because that's done with a needle and thread, and you go through a bead and then you go around another bead and you pull it down, and there's a sequin in there, and there's just, her work was absolutely incredible. And she sat down beside me and she said, I don't have any other career, and the doctor said if I don't stop making wedding dresses, I will lose all use of my hands. This is why when you watch my videos, you will see very little. I think only once have I ever suggested you hand sew. And it isn't me insulting those of you who love hand sewing. It's me hoping you don't become like her, and I don't remember her name. But she had beaded. She would hold the wedding dress. She would hold on to the wedding dress like this, take the needle, which is really small, and whenever you squish and hold something together for a long period of time, you're actually doing an isometric exercise, and our bodies are designed to be really lazy. So when you do something and it starts to fatigue or feel pain, which can be just like that when doing free motion, pushing down against your fabric, your body sends you the signal, because without the brain, you do not feel pain. So if you don't know that you are hurting, you can actually cause your body to kick into this physiological state where it says, all right, we have pain in our fingers. Let's stop the body from having to do all that work of holding it in one position for a very long time. And let's join the joints together. Let's calcify. Let's add some bone, kind of. And it locked her hands in this position. So she was locked like this, walking around when not holding fabric, walking around like that. And she had lost the ability to even move these fingers. She only had a very small range of motions, like claws, from the opening and closing of holding the fabric and holding the bead and holding the needle. So this is a real injury that you can experience. So you want to be very careful when sewing by hand to take lots of breaks and to do opposite movements. And when you do this, make sure, if you have not put your hands together like this and push your palms together in a long time, you want to be really slow in doing it now. And that's basically what you want to do. You want to create other movements of your fingers so that you don't lose your range of motion. That was one of the things I did when I was in nursing, is I was helping people keep what range of motion they had left. These are actually the kind of pearls that released. This is a high quality bridal 4mm pearl stitched on the edge of a satin stitch created by my satin edge foot, and I monogrammed that bride and groom on my octi hoops. This was not done with an embroidery machine. You can see the embroidery is not all the way through. So this is my champagne mug rug pattern, and you can find this as an actual video inside my YouTube channel should you want to. Tell me in the comments if you would like me to make a wedding veil video next, because I was thinking about it. We're almost coming up to June, and June brides. I don't know if you know anyone who wants a wedding veil, and because my daughter didn't. All the years of my company, and she got married and she's like, I don't want a veil. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't want a veil? I wanted to make you a veil for your wedding. Life is full of things that we don't expect. And that lady did not expect to be alone and be told she can't do what is her survival. And I totally relate to her right now. Because it seems like no matter what I do, my company is just challenged, sometimes it just feels like nothing's working, like I'm invisible. And then I'm like reminded of the miracles that have happened in my life because of the spirits and God, the guidance and the protection that we really do have in these moments where we feel we're desperate, whether we've somehow failed. Sorry, I'm a little bit loopy. I was so on after my last video and then falling on my face, and it's just like, wow. Every time I started on this big project of my school and my CreativeFeet extensive course, something seemed to go wrong. But you know what I'm doing now? I have this little microphone that attaches to my shirt, and I'm using my cell phone, and I'm editing as I'm filming and working my way through the CreativeFeet extensive, and cannot wait to announce that it's finished and to create other patterns and projects like the Babbling Brook that you can already take at clarerowley.com if you want to learn how to ink your fabric. I also have a brand new ink company that sent me their inks for me to try. A brand new, I don't know if it's ink or paint, but that will be a video that I'm going to do very soon. So I'll do the unboxing and testing, and if I like it, it'll be available at creativefeet.com. But at very least, there'll be an affiliate link so that you can buy it. And I may even do that later on today as a rest, to just rest and paint and then turn it into something. What should I turn this fish quilt that I'm working on into? I uploaded, or am uploading, that video and this video today. So you should be finding one educational video from me and this My Story episode. Breaking these down by feet. But I am going to take you on I'm probably going to be taking you through lots of different stories in the sewing industry after I cover the CreativeFeet. As mentioned before, my father and I were pivotal in the invention of stitches on sewing machines. Sewing machine companies something would come out, a new stretchy fabric, because stretch fabrics are very, very young. 1978 being the beginning of like Lycra and stretchy elastic that wasn't made from rubber trees. Which is why if you have any garments that are like antique, the rubber is rotted and stinky because it was made from a rubber tree, and anything that was a living organism like that started to rot and decay. So the synthetics are making it so that we don't have that issue. So if I could give this lady a name, let's call her Phyllis. And know that we're just giving her a name, unless that is her name. Maybe it is. The Phyllis was so heartbroken because she said, I know that you're sewing them on. How are you doing it? And I said, well, we're using a zipper foot, and then we lay the beads on the side of the foot and we hold our finger out like this and sew it. But I could see that she didn't have the ability to take that finger and spread it all the way out. So she said, well, let me try. And she tried, and she couldn't. And she cried. She broke down. I embraced her, and I said, I'm going to try to make a foot for you. And I went to sleep that night. And in my sleep, I did what's called lucid dreaming. It's one of my gifts. And lucid dreaming is where you have conscious mind, subconscious mind. You are asleep, which usually your conscious mind is unaware of. But in a lucid dream, you become aware that you're dreaming. And then there's this other level of consciousness where you evaluate the dream and you can interact within the dream. So the entire night, I was not really, and this is astral travel. And if any of this is new to you, well, now you know. This is not uncommon for inventors, by the way, to be given these gifts of lucid dreaming. Very common. So I am inside of the store, my parents' store at the time, where I was a mechanic servicing sewing machines and working alongside my father in helping to modify things to make it so people with only one hand could sew, no legs could sew, all different challenges. My father's name was Don Rowley. My mother's Lucille Rowley. And they're treasures. Major impact on the sewing industry between the two of them, creating the very first machine use workbook, which was stolen by Janome, the concept, instead of hiring that out from my parents. And my father ended up inventing the Hoop It All, and he's the creator of our stick and tear stabilizer, which you will find at creativefeet.com. Still the best embroidery adhesive back tearaway stabilizer on the market. If you like being able to just lay your fabric down and not have to hold it in place, and you don't like your needle getting sticky, and you want to be able to not worry about stitch count, our stick and tear is the best, and it is the same as my dad invented. So in my dream, I was like taking existing feet and then going to the grinding wheel and changing the shape. And by morning, I had figured out the right foot, which saved me all that time while being awake. So I went into the store, and within about 15 minutes, I had a foot. But it wasn't going to hold 4 millimeter wide pearls, only the 2 millimeter, and that one came out first. The 4 millimeter came out maybe a year later, because people were like, I would like a bigger bead, because you guys always want more. And so I made that foot to just hold that size pearl. And boy, did I hear it from other people in the sewing industry, other stores and people that were just about to come out with a foot for pearls. And they were saying, that's my design. I was going to do that. But they didn't have this woman to work with. They didn't have a person who couldn't stick her fingers out like that. So the shape of the tunnel of my pearls and piping foot is completely unique to every copy of every sewing machine company's copycat of my pearls and piping foot. And know that I invented it first. It took years for them to copy me. Most of the sewing machine companies, including Janome and Singer, Brother. Baby Lock wasn't even a brand back then. Elna. And they were buying my feet. Viking Husqvarna, which was just Viking Husqvarna back then. They all were buying my creative foot, and they would get my packaging and give it to their customers. And then they all decided to come out with their own foot. And that had a lot to do with the fact that sewing machine companies all started to go under, and they were having different companies buy them, and those companies were not necessarily the most ethical companies, and they were out of the country, so it was harder to sue them. And so that's my sad story. The pearls and piping foot has a unique tunnel which allows you to not have to touch those pearls at all. So if you ever watch someone sewing with a beading foot online, or if you have one from your sewing machine company and you can't completely let go of those pearls, you're at risk of breaking needles and also causing the fabric to gather, because you're holding the beads instead of the feed dogs pulling it through easily. We're almost done here. So the principles of my pearls and piping foot is that the tunnel is a roof. And you know how if you have an A-framed house and it has walls, and the walls come closer, they get taller and they go higher in that peak. So that's the principles that I used. Also, I thought about the culverts They have water, and the water just flows really fast, but it looks like the water is calm, but it's flowing really fast beneath. And they have angled walls as well, which all of these principles were all worked out in my sleep. And so the pearls and piping foot tunnel shape makes it outperform any foot. Also, it has a catcher's mitt front end. So as trims approach the pearls and piping foot, it grabs it instead of being a sheer wall that the trim has to kind of get around. And like a tunnel, you're going under this tunnel and you're in a train. You want to be guided, but you don't want to bounce around inside there. So the A-frame rooftop tunnel of the pearls and piping foot keeps the beads from bouncing around and moving side to side. It's only possible with the design that I came up with. The material that we use for the Creative Feet is a very unique blend, a proprietary blend. And the year that we started making them out of plastic was the year that DuPont accidentally created polycarbonate. And polycarbonate is what glasses, they make the lenses out of plane windshields and windows. And so over the years, this product has evolved, and you add other things in there to give it different qualities that make it unique. And the pearls and piping foot and sequin ribbon and satin edge, all three have this same proprietary blend that acts like Teflon. So you don't even need Teflon feet. And our feet, being each capable of well over 25 different things, having that slippery quality means that you have like 100 Teflon feet. So everything you ever want to do with a Teflon foot, you don't need one, just use ours. The pearls and piping foot is a very surprising little foot. Not only does it sew pearls on, but it also gathers your fabric all the way up, so you can make tutus in a few seconds. You just sew forward, back with a long stitch length and a tight tension, and it automatically gathers the fabric all the way up to its full gather on lighter fabrics. And then there's 7 different methods of gathering. So gathering and what is the difference? Tell me in the comments. What's the difference between a gather and a ruffle? They're both fabric that's gathered, but what's the difference between the two? And I'm going to tell you, a gather is adjustable and a ruffle is not. But both fabrics are gathered, and they both end up a ruffle in the end. This is why it's nice to have my book, because you get the names for things, the techniques, the uses. And the Creative Feet Extensive course is just going to take that over the top. Just checking my little light on my microphone, making sure it's still charged. And let's see. So the pearls and piping foot solves the struggle of the bowl cozies when you're doing your final stitch. So if you are not familiar with what a bowl cozy is, I was asked so many times at shows by people going, can you please help me understand how cotton fabric is the right fabric for a bowl cozy? And I was like, what's a bowl cozy? So I'm not taking credit for the bowl cozies, but I did modify the pattern for being able to have one hand used with a bowl cozy. There's a loop for someone's thumb to go through. So when you're holding your bowl of soup, you only need one hand. It just stays in there. The other thing is what's the right fabric? What's the right batting? So I did a science project. That's how I'm wired. So is it true that cotton fabric is the best fabric to use for things that might catch on fire in the microwave? Absolutely not. Zero. You should never use any cotton product that's going to be exposed to something that catches on fire. And I know that some of you were just immediately shocked by hearing that right now. You could navigate to my Creative Notions playlist on my channel and watch the fire episode. The episode about things that catch fire in the microwave, so that you're informed and know your options. So the final stitch on these bowl cozies is this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 thicknesses of batting and fabric, and you have to do an edge stitch all the way around. And the pearls and piping foot it's just astonishing. So you have your 1/4 inch seam allowance stitched around, and then it's folded like this, and now you got to sew that straight stitch right along there, and that 1/4 inch seam allowance just goes right into that A-frame tunnel and holds it for you, so you can get a perfect edge stitch all the way around, and it just like you can't mess it up. So that's another wonderful thing it does. In addition to that, it sews all your zippers and holds your zippers down, and keeps your stitch the perfect distance away from the zipper without you having to force it or look at anything. Let's see. And then when the pearls and piping foot, when I first released it, because of the fact that Viking Husqvarna and some other machines like Necky had their needle position off to the side of everybody else. So I had to make 2 feet. So originally there was a C and an L. If you have our original feet for the Creative Feet Pearls and Piping Foot that I released way back in 1989, that version was 2 feet in the package, and they had adapters on them. So you had to know which machine you had. And I would sell one with a low shank, one with a high shank, one with a Singer slant, one with a Kenmore. And even that was fantastic because the Kenmore machine didn't have very many options of feet. So if you have the Kenmore really tall, or there's other brands of machines that have now adapted to that super high adapter. So just know that we've got you pretty much covered on the adapters that come with the Creative Feet. But the first run, when we first released the Creative Feet, there was a problem with the mold, and this was the beginning of injection molding. So I helped make the mold. These first feet weren't that pretty. They had you could still see some of the sanding, because back then they didn't have EDI, which is a really fine way of cutting into the steel of a mold. And I don't even know how I found this guy, but he's like, I have this little arbor press, which was for resin and stuff. I think we can convert it to injection molding. And so we made the mold together, and then it went in there, and we had probably the first injection molding machine in the world, very quite possibly, because metal. People often ask me, why don't you make your feet out of metal? Because metal, like a can, sweats and takes moisture out of the air. So when you have a metal foot and it sits on your fabric, it can spread the fabric out like dough because it's metal. And the creation of this plastic and the fact that it behaves like Teflon and just slides over everything just made it all the more better than had I stayed with metal. I was doing metal for years. We were having machine shops do the same thing I did when I made the feet, which was modify existing feet. Injection molding was when we actually began making the foot 100% and not having to need any supporting parts. So that was when I decided to go to our international show for dealers, and we were surrounded by thousands of people all day long. No one had ever seen anything like the Creative Feet. And that's why my patents were granted right away. But your patents only protect you for 19 years, and we're 36 years in. However, if anyone's listening that wants to knock me off, I did make a change in 1994, and I can, if I have the funding, sue every sewing machine company that's ever copied me. Because I can modify my patent, which reestablishes another 19 years. But all this requires money, so we'll just see where I'm supposed to go in my life as to what happens. Each foot has a long story that has stories connected to it. At the time when I released this foot, there was never a foot where you could completely let go of the fabric or let go of whatever it was you were sewing. Everyone had to like glue down or pin using straight pins, pin things down in order to sew them. And then whenever you pin something down and you have a fabric, they never move together, so you end up with puckers and all kinds of issues. Let's see, where are we at? I think I'm almost done. I reserve the right to bring up the pearls and piping foot again later. It was a really fun day when Nancy Zeman used my pearls and piping foot for the first time. I met Clotilda from Clotilda Sewing Catalog. If you don't know who she is, very special woman, another inventor. She invented the perfect pleater, and she was a dynamo. She ended up passing from Alzheimer's disease, but was my mother on the road. That's what I called her. You'll see the dedication in the book, Creative Feet Technical Guide and Workbook, if you purchase that. And so Nancy Zeman's sitting down at my machine at my very first show. I'll try to find pictures of that. No matter what, at some point when and if the book is published, I will have these photos. God willing. I have moved several times. So Clotilde, or Nancy Zeman, is sitting down and she's holding on to the beads. And I said, "You're not supposed to hold on to the beads." And she's like, "Well, how am I supposed to do that?" She was just, it really messed with her. And I go, "You just turn the fabric and the pearls will just turn." And I'm like, "Do I have any pearls?" I have this. I can show you what she did. It was so funny. She was sitting down and she had the pearls up over her pinky and she was going like this and still guiding. And I said, "No, you have to let go of the pearls or you cause the fabric to gather," which is a technique that I have, but if you hold them while you're sewing, you don't want that. You don't want fabric to gather. And Nancy's like, "How am I supposed to just let go of the fabric or of it?" I go, "Sit on your hands." And so she put her hands underneath her legs and she sewed. And she was just like, oh my gosh. For 10 years, the Creative Feet were on the cover of Sewing with Nancy and on the cover of Clotilda. And I never had to pay for that because they were just so impressed by the product. And we were their top selling product for 10 years. And now the sewing machine companies have just made it look like I never existed. So I'm trying to get out there, share this video. Try not to feel sad for me, fight for me. Tell your dealers that they can carry our products because all the feet that they have combined cannot do what our satin edge foot alone can do. So there's no point in them not carrying them, correct? Sewing machine companies try to strong arm them and make them think that they're at risk of losing their dealership if they use the Creative Feet or sell them in their stores. It's just amazing. My first event that I plan to do will be in Durango, Colorado. If you're interested in coming with your own sewing machine and actually you having your tush in the chair and you actually doing the sewing and learn with me as your teacher, be sure to go to my school, creativefeet.com, or you can email and say, add me to the wait list, and I will let you know when we are ready to announce the event that I plan to do, a 3-day event here in Durango. That's the goal, God willing. No more falling on my face. And also, tell your dealers you want the Creative Feet products in your stores if you want to support us. And also you could purchase at creativefeet.com. Share this with your sewing friends. And I hope I didn't depress you. This is a long video and I didn't even cover all the things about the pearls and piping foot. Oh, like Viking came up with like 5 feet to try to do what our 1 foot does and things like that. With that, if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel or wherever you're watching me, please do so today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next My Sewing Story video. If If you're still watching at this point, I appreciate you so much. And even if you did leave early, I appreciate you so much. Love and light. Blessings. See you next time.